نبدأ البانل بتاعتنا النهارده مناقشة ما بين اثنين من المحترفين في مجال التطوير المهني، دكتور براين هاتشسون من الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية ومنى خالد خبيرة التطوير المهني في مصر والدول العربية. تمام. في بعض الأسئلة عايزين نسألها لهم، وإذا حد من الحضور يحب يحضر سؤال أو حاجة لو سمحتوا. تمام. Hello, Dr. Brian.
Hello.
I would like to know as a start, how did you start career development? Or how career development kicked off in your life?
I pursued what I needed. My family is a working class family, and so I'm the first person to go to college. And so I got a degree, and I graduated, and I had a job, and then another job, and then another job. And by the time I got to the age of 31, I didn't have a good sense of stability or purpose in my life. And so at a friend's recommendation, I went to a mental health counselor first, who then did career development work with me. Is this okay? Do I sound? There we go. Okay.
It's working now.
So yeah, I went to a counselor to talk about how I was feeling about my life. And the counselor also did career counseling, career development work. And the more that I was impacted by the power of that part of this work, I realized that the problems in my life weren't mental health problems as much as they were that I had never shaped my career. So my life felt unshaped because I was just taking the next opportunity, maybe taking a job for more money, maybe taking a job to move to a different town. But as I was in my 30s, it was just very unsatisfying. And so because of the power that Dr. Gallen was his name, that Dr. Gallen had in my life, I made a decision. Well, there's a small side story. I had a job that I got, and I was not qualified, and the employer was a university, and they said, you need a master's degree for this job. And my response was, I have a contract. So they said, okay, yes, you can keep the job, but you can never get promoted. You can never move around in the university unless you get a master's degree. So shortly after the career work, I was forced to make a choice to get a master's degree. And the choice was very easy for me. It was to study career counseling at Penn State University, which at that time was the #1 career counseling university, I think, in the United States, working with Dr. Spencer Niles, who is part of Dr. Feller's cohort of the most famous career professionals in the world. And I've been satisfied with the quality and the shape of my life ever since.
For how long now?
Let's see, 33. So I got 33, 19 years. 19 years, yeah.
Impressive.
Yeah.
رائع. مش محتاجين ترجمة، مش هترجم. تمام. I was asking if they need interpretation or not.
Oh, okay.
They're okay. They're okay.
Okay.
Okay. So then, when did you take your expertise and education, career development, or career counseling to the international scope?
I love this story personally. I was working in a career services center at Penn State after I graduated, and sometimes they would ask me to host an intern for a very short period of time, maybe 10 weeks. And so I was always hosting interns, and one of them was an international student from Korea, South Korea. And in the United States, we don't always treat international students, immigrants, or refugees equally. And in my mind, he was another intern, someone that I treated with dignity and respect and tried to be helpful to. And I didn't realize how much impact that had on him in his career journey, because he reached out to me several months later, and he said, based on our conversations, I put together a career development program that I would like to deliver for 1 week at Korea University back in my home country. And since you were so instrumental in helping me, I would like for you to come as my guest, stay some time with my family, and get to teach at Korea University, which was my first international trip. His name is, Rich knows him, his name is Yoon-Choo Yoon. He is an NCDA fellow, and he, in the human resources and workforce development side, is a very successful professor. But in my mind, and I think this is why I love the story, I was just being kind and generous, which is the way that I want to be most in my life. I didn't realize that there was impact. And so I had to get I never had a passport before that. I never had traveled other than Mexico and Canada outside of the United States. And so people in Korea asked me if I could help them with their research. I said yes, no money, no, just to say yes, just to be helpful. And then people in other Asian countries and through NCDA said, well, can you help with this? And I said yes. And then it just turned into, Egypt is my 30th country that I've visited since 2009, and my 51st country that I have worked with through career development. In just, how many years is that? 13 years?
So many.
Maybe?
Yeah.
So, and I care. Like, I was telling some of my colleagues last night, my wife is not happy because I am not motivated by money. I am motivated, there they are. The look on their face when I said that was, what is wrong with him? But she knows that I'm here to serve a purpose. And that I have a heart that just cares about humanity, about people, and about the goodness of their life, the quality of their life. And career is the main vessel that we pour our life into that shapes it, right? It helps determine our health. I said earlier today, but like, I sit at a desk all day, so my shoulders are forward, my head is forward, my stomach is too big because of my career. My brother, much thinner, but he hurts in different places because he is a laborer in a stone yard, and his career is shaping his body. It shapes his wealth. It shapes his children's school. It shapes his community. It shapes his friendships. And that can be a bad thing if we don't tend career development like we tend a garden.
Yeah.
Okay? But if we tend our careers like we tend to a garden, right? We put it in the right place. We plant it in the right soil. We give it water. I mean, we're in Egypt, right? We understand how water impacts agriculture. So if we create the right environment for people to grow in because of their career, I think that there's nothing more I could do in my life that would impact other people positively than help with that. I can't, can't think of anything else.
Way to go.
منى احكي لنا الأول ازاي التطوير المهني والكارير ديفلوبمنت. ازاي التطوير المهني بدأ معاك؟
طيب هو أنا بمارس التطوير المهني بشكل احترافي من حوالي 10 سنين أو أكتر، بس قصة الكارير ديفلوبمنت بدأت معايا من حوالي 25 سنة كده وأنا عندي 13 سنة. أتذكر إن أنا كنت بشوف مامتي حد عنده باشن للارت، بس هي متخرجه من بزنس ادمنستريشن وبتشتغل مدرسه. فانا كان بالنسبه لي ده تساؤل كبير اللي هو يعني why isn't she doing what she does يعني. وفي نفس الوقت ده انعكس عليها كانها ما كانتش سعيده وما كانتش عارفه تأدي دورها كأم وزوجه، فطول الوقت حاسه ان هي مش عارفه تمانج ادوارها المختلفه في الحياه. وفي نفس الوقت شايفه ابويا حياته متمحوره كلها على الوظيفه فقط، ان هو بيروح الشغل الصبح وبيرجع بالليل وبينام ويصحى يروح الشغل ويرجع بالليل، واللي هو مفيش حياه. وكان دايما يقول كلمه: انا لما يوم ما هطلع معاش انا هموت. وفعلا بابايا توفى بعد ما طلع معاش بسنه. فهو يعني he asked for what he wanted يعني. بس فانا من وانا عندي 13 سنه وانا دخلت في رحله البحث عن الذات، تين ايجر بيدور على الايدنتيتي. فبدات كده اشوف هو انا بحب ايه. فكنت بحب قوي ان انا في الاجازه ان انا الحاجات اللي انا درستها في المدرسه اقعد اعملها في مجله، اجيب كل المعلومات اللي انا درستها في المدرسه واحطها في مجله. فانا تخيلت ان هي دي الصحافه، فانا قررت ان انا كده انا صحفيه. ما كنتش عارفه اترجم اللي انا بحبه ده معناه ايه. يعني بعد كده ادركت ان ده مش صحافه، ده I'm passionate to knowledge and sharing knowledge with others, so it is learning and development or instructional designing, which I work in now. I'm an instructional designer. So وقتها ما كانش في حد قادر يساعدني يقول لي اللي انتي بتعمليه ده in terms of professional work اسمه ايه. فانا قررت ان انا هخش صحافه. الحمد لله ان انا ما جبتش مجموع صحافه، يعني ما دخلتش اعلام، دخلت business administration. وده من توفيق من عند ربنا، لان انا حقيقي لو كنت دخلت صحافه ما كنتش هبقى مبسوطه، لان انا اصلا ده مسموح صحافه. فلما دخلت بزنس دخلت عملت internships كتير جدا لحد ما قررت ان انا هتخصص في الهيومن ريسورسز. بعد ما اتخرجت اشتغلت في شركات الاستشارات الاداريه، وكنت بروح شركات كتير قوي بعمل ميتينجز مع كل الموظفين في الشركات علشان نعمل job descriptions واعاده هيكله للشركات، لان الشركات شايفه مشاكل مع الموظفين، والحل التراديشنال ان احنا نعيد هيكله الشركه ونكتب job descriptions ونحط competency موديل للشركه ونحل الموضوع in terms of systems، ولكن الموضوع ما كانش systems. انا كنت بقعد مع الناس، كنت بسمي الفقره دي فقره البؤساء. انا قاعده مع ناس بؤساء، هم طول الوقت حاسين ان هم انا قاعد هنا ليه؟ انا اصلا ما كنتش نفسي اشتغل الشغلانه دي. فاللي هو كان نفسي اروح للمانجمنت اللي هو he hired me علشان احط له job description واحط له structure. المشكله مش في البوكس بتاع structure ولا في الجوب description، المشكله في ان الموظف ده is disengaged تماما. It's not a skill problem, it is a will problem. ساعتها بقى بدات ادور هو ايه السولوشن او الحاجه اللي تقدر تخليني اساعد الناس دي ان هم يلاقوا نفسهم. فالحمد لله ربنا وفقني ان انا اتعرف على احمد مصطفى، ودرست سنه 2010 بدات ادرس الكارير ديفلوبمنت. اكتر حاجه اثرت فيا في الكارير ديفلوبمنت اللي انا بنيت عليها ال10 سنين التاليه the definition of career. It was an eye opener for me that career is not a job. Aha moment. Okay, so career is not a job. Yes, it is a life experience, the sum of your life experiences and a way of living. This is يعني كانت أكتر حاجة غيرت حياتي. بعد ما خدت GCDF
عربي
اوكي.
You switched to English, so
No.
I was listening.
اوكي. عشان الديفينيشن بتاع الكارير انا حافظاه باي هارت يعني. اوكي. فبعد ما خدت GCDF قررت رحت الشركه اللي انا بشتغل فيها وقلت لهم انا I want to be a freelancer because انا عايزه اخد طريق موازي للشغل في الكونسلتيشن وعايزه اشتغل GCDF. ومن ساعتها تبنيت فكره ان الكارير مش وظيفه، وبدات يعني رسالتي ان انا اهتم بنشر مفهوم الكارير بشكل صحيح، ان هو مش بس الوظيفه، هو ازاي تقدر تدير كل الادوار اللي في حياتك بشكل صحيح، وان بدل ما اختار وظيفه واحاول احشر حياتي جواها، لا انا اشوف اللايف ستايل اللي انا عايزه اعيشه واختار الوظيفه الصحيحه اللي تمشي مع اللايف ستايل ده، خاصة السيدات. الكالتشر بتاعنا السيدات بتعاني بسبب ان هم مش عارفين يوازنوا بين دورهم الوظيفي كجوب وادوارهم التانية كزوجات وامهات وكده، وطول الوقت في ضغط مجتمعي ان انت لو ما اشتغلتيش انت كده ما عندكيش كيان، انت ما عندكيش كارير، وهكذا. فطبعا ده كان من ضمن اهدافي ان انا احسس الستات ان انت حتى لو قعدتي في البيت وربيتي ولادك this is a career. motherhood is a career.
إنجاز طبعا.
بالظبط. ف I started to spreading الكونسبت ده. بس going way forward.
اوكي. طيب ماشي. For you now, Dr. Brian.
Okay.
Okay. Along your track in career development and expertise you have gained along the years, what are the opportunities and challenges you have met, and how did you overcome them?
Well, we talk a lot about community and networking, and so again, coming from where I came from, the family I came from, I didn't feel like I had a network, right, a community. And it was very psychologically difficult for me to be asked to study under my mentor, Dr. Niles, and to realize that he would open so many doors of opportunity with me that initially felt unearned, right? So when you grow up not having a career perspective, not having wealth, not having access to a lot of good things, I think that there can, for me, I'll just speak for me, there's this mentality that I have to fight for it. I have to earn it, I have to work harder than everyone else, I have to be better than everyone else. And as soon as I became his doctoral student and went to my first NCDA conference, I'm having dinner with the people that wrote the textbooks that I was learning from, and they're interested in me, and they're interested in my life. And psychologically, I pushed that away. I thought, this is not right. And thank goodness he is a very gracious, patient person, and he came from a similar place as me, a similar family, and he grew up in the same state that I grew up in. So I think that he knew, in fact we joked today, I see him a little bit as a father figure, which means I'm much too critical of him and give him way too little grace because of that mentality. And so for me, I always think of that because I do prefer to work with first-generation college students, immigrants, blue-collar clients that are trying to transcend the environment they were born into and to become something more. And there's a real psychological element to that, right? There's a real restructuring of our mental processes that has to happen when we change cultures, when we change social classes, and when we change our identity. And so one of the things that Dr. Feller and some others were talking about this morning was being precise with our language. And so I am a believer in career coaching, and I believe that career coaches help us identify, clarify, and achieve goals. Okay? I believe that counselors are instrumental as a goal, and I believe that counselors do those things that coaches do, but we can actually help you restructure the cognitive processes in your brain. So a lot of clients come to career work with trauma, with oppression, with hard backgrounds that are impacting their thought processes about career development.
Yes. I second this.
So at its best, a coach would recognize that and refer them to a career counselor because a coach does not know how to change cognitive processes. Okay? Now, we don't have career counselors in many countries yet, right? So at the very least, a coach needs to know that there's a difference between what they've been trained to do, which has monumental importance, but that there might be something else happening as well.
Yes.
So it's the same thing. I can do psychology, but if you have a brain tumor, you do not want me to be your surgeon. I didn't study that. I have no knowledge of that. And so as we get precise with our language, there are different facets of career development, and none of us are experts in all of them. Okay? And so we have assessment. Many people can use assessment.
Cannot interpret the results.
Would you like to add something?
Many people have assessments, but cannot interpret the results correctly.
Correct.
Because sometimes clients come with career issues, but you discover that the issue is childhood trauma or a relationship issue with their spouse.
Yep. Yep.
So counselors have to have a bag of tools that you can grab from it when needed.
Yep.
Coaches can, like you said, direct and clarify and put a plan.
Yeah, for a goal.
Yes, and this is a challenge here we face in Egypt, that they still don't can differentiate between different helping skills.
Yep.
People cannot differentiate between coaching, counseling, different therapy. So we have a variety of coaches now, career coaches, but unfortunately they don't have the tools to help all the cases.
So if I can build on that with an example, so I'm also a mental health therapist. And in my case, I supervise younger therapists. And so I look at all of their cases, we talk about them every week. And so in my caseload, I have one therapist who has 2 clients that have hallucinations, that see people and talk to them that the rest of us do not see. Those 2 clients have really important career problems because that mental health problem makes them a terrible employee,
Yes.
right? Like, they need work to pay for therapy. Yeah, they need work to pay for therapy, they need to pay for medication, they need a job. But imagine holding a job when you are seeing hallucinations or hearing hallucinations, okay? And other diagnoses, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, depression, and abuse. I have another supervisee that works with women who have had to flee their marriage because of very bad physical abuse. Okay, so they get to go to a shelter that's hidden. The husband cannot find them. They can take their kids. But the shelter can only afford to house them for 3 months or maybe 4 months. So what's the one thing that they need most to not have to return to an abusive household? A job. So they've been traumatized, they're homeless, they're trying to care for their children, they're trying to hide from someone, and the thing that they need most is a job. Same thing for refugees to the United States. Refugees get an apartment and get funding, and I can't remember the number of months, I think it's 4 or 5 months. But they have to have employment within a certain period of time because the money that they're given by the government runs out. And so, yes, career development for many of us, most of us, is super, super important, but we have to remember career development for those of us that have the least support in society is survival, right? Like, it's survival. And those clients can't pay me my fee. And so they get the least amount of services. They get the least amount of resources and access to help. And so I want to hold both those things all the time, right? I love working with people in corporations and career transitions and college students. But this really shapes everyone's life, everyone's. I don't even know if I answered the question,
No.
but I had a good time.
I love the voice. I love vibes.
منى ما تحكي لنا على التطوير المهني بالنسبه للشباب والفئات العمريه اللي اشتغلت معاها سواء في مصر او خارج مصر، وكان ايه التاثير اللي انت لمستيه وايه التحديات اللي شفتيها طبعا على التاثير اللي حصل؟
طيب لما بدات الكارير ديفلوبمنت اهتميت قوي بالهاي سكول او اللي هم الثانوي، مرحله الثانوي، لان دي بحس ان هي اكتر مرحله كريتيكال، لان للاسف احنا عندنا نظام التعليم في مصر زي ما انت عارفه الثانويه العامه احنا محددين بالمجموع، فطبعا ما كانش سهل ابدا ان انا بعمل سيشن مع حد في ثانويه عامه واقول له مثلا الدايركشن، يعني نحاول نشوف دايركشن وفي الاخر المجموع بتاعه مش هيجيب الكليه اللي هو كان نفسه يدخلها، فده كان تحدي. فعشان كده بدأنا نفكر في حاجه اسمها الطريق الموازي، يعني ازاي تقدر ممكن نخش كليه معينه ونحاول نشوف ايه المهارات اللي انت هتتعلمها من الكليه دي وتطلع منها تبدا تعمل دراسات عليا في الحاجه اللي انت بتحبها علشان تاخد طريق موازي يساتسفاي الحاجه او الطريق اللي انت هتاخده. دي حاجه. الحاجه الثانيه اللي انا بقى لمستها ريسنتلي في الشغل مع الطلبه على مستوى الاجيال بقى المختلفه، ان مش دايما التولز اللي بنستخدمها بتبقى مناسبه لكل الطلبه.
يعني ايه مش مناسبه؟
يعني في ساعات بيبقى مناسب تستخدمي تول ورقه وقلم، وساعات لا هم عايزين more engaging and based on collaborative learning اكتر عشان يبتدي يكتشف ممكن يكون هو الانترست بتاعته ايه.
الطالب في المستوى الاجتماعي
ما دي بقى برضه هي دي برضه تشالنج لتحدي اخر، ان التولز دي مش متوفره لكل الفئات علشان بقت يعني حتى بعد الانفليشن اللي حصل اسعارها بقت غاليه جدا، فبنحاول نشوف alternatives او بدائل تكون تقدر تساتسفاي او تبقى ملائمه لكل الفئات والسوشيال كلاسز او الفئات المجتمعيه. وده انا جربته لما طبقت كذا برنامج في الملاجئ ودور الرعايه. كان ليا تجارب مع الايتام خليتها اكتر تيم بيلدينج اكتيفيتيز، يعني بنلعب لعب تخلينا نكتشف نفسنا اكتر بدل ما تبقى، لان هما طبعا كفئه يعني ما يفهموا، ما اقدرش اديهم اي بي مثلا، ما اقدرش يعني الايتام كان صعب عليهم قوي ان هما يستوعبوا الاي بي، فحولتها لسيميوليشنز وجيمز وكده يقدروا يطلعوا منها ممكن يكونوا هم ايه الانترست بتاعتهم. ده جزء. ممكن بقى نروح للجزء الثاني اللي هو بتاع على مستوى البيرنتس بقى، اولياء الامور. اولياء الامور لو نقارن زمان هتحسي ان هم اللي عايزين يخططوا لاولادهم، هم
هيبقوا كده بتتكلمي على اجيال.
بالظبط
صح كده؟
بالظبط زي جيل مامتي، يعني انا ومامتي لما كانت عايزه تخش فنون جميله باباها قال لها لا، فنون جميله دي هوايه، ادخلي كليه اداره اعمال يبقى معاكي شهاده ومارسي هوايتك بعدين. الطريق الموازي بس ساعتها ما كانش فيه الفكر بتاع الطريق الموازي، وفي الاخر اشتغلت مدرسه عشان الحياه اجبرتها انها لازم تشتغل الوظيفه دي عشان تعرف تبقى مع اولادها في المدرسه وكده. فده كان الفكر القديم، ولسه في ناس مقتنعه ان ابني لازم يطلع مهندس او دكتور لحد وقتنا الحالي. بالظبط. فلسه عندنا الكالتشر دي وفي ضغط فظيع، بس شويه اولياء الامور بدات تدرك ان في حد اسمه كارير ديفلوبمنت براكتيشنر يقدر يساعد ابني او بنتي ان هو ياخد قرار. فالموضوع ده يعني بقى فيه وعي شويه. اوكي، لسه عايزين يدومينيتوا، يعني ساعات بيجي لي بيرنتس
يسيطروا على
يقول لي
الأولاد.
ايه اقنعي ابني انه يخش طب اسنان، واقول له انا ده مش دوري.
لا المفروض يرادك هاخد كام؟
ايوه بالظبط. فلسه شويه محتاجين وعي اكتر في الحته دي، ان انا ادرك ان انا مش معنى ان هو ابني يبقى انا املكه، وان هو ممكن لازم يبقى زيي او امشيه الطريق اللي انا عايزه وامشي فيه. ده جزء. على مستوى بقى الشركات، زي ما دكتور ريتش ذكر في البرزنتيشن بتاعته، لما بنيجي نحط ديفلوبمنت بلان، اوكي 10% بس من الديفلوبمنت بلان، 10% فقط للتريننج. الشركات لسه عندها التحدي بتاع ان انا لما يبقى عندي مشكله ادي الموظفين تريننج، بس هو نون تريننج سولوشن اصلا. هو المشكله اللي عندك ما بتتحلش بالتريننج. في حاجه اسمها بروجكت اساينمنتس وفي حاجه اسمها كوتشنج. فلسه برضو شويه عندنا تحدي مع الكوربريت، ان انا عندي كومبتنسي موديل وعايز الناس يبقوا ماشيين على الكومبتنسي موديل ده. فكره بقى ان انا احاول اشوف ازاي اخد بالي من الويل بينج بتاع الموظف علشان يبقى انجيجد. احنا بنخش التريننج روم بيبقى عندنا كم من الشكاوى غير طبيعي كلها ما بتتحلش بالتريننج. فالشركات محتاجه تفكر ازاي تبتدي تتبنى مفهوم الكارير الجديد، اللي هو كارير is not just a job، لا في الويل بينج بتاع الموظف ده هناخد بالك منه ازاي علشان يفضل منتمي للشركه بتاعتك. محتاج تعامله كبني ادم مش كأداة عشان تحقق اهدافك وخلاص. فده برضه تحدي كبير، محتاجين يعني آليات نشوف بيها ازاي الشركات تقدر تطبق مفهوم الكارير ديفلوبمنت بشكل صحيح.
تمام. في أسئلة ممكن توجهوها؟ في أي أسئلة يا جماعة عندنا؟ تمام. منى خلينا نكمل معاكي سؤال كمان بالنسبة ل المحترفين في التطوير المهني، وهل في ضغط موجود حاليا في سوق التطوير المهني؟ هنسميه سوق. من وجهة نظرك شايفة ايه؟
للاسف بقى دلوقتي البروجرامز بقت كتير قوي اونلاين، ممكن الواحد يخش ياخد كام ساعه تريننج وبعدين يغير الستيتس بتاعه ويقول انا كارير كوتش. فبقى عندنا كارير كوتشز وهم الصراحه يعني للاسف بيجي لي من الكارير كوتشز دول ضحايا. ضحاياهم كلهم عندي الحقيقه. الكارير كوتشنج هايل، وزي ما دكتور براين قال الكارير كوتشنج ستارتس لما ممكن يستارت بعد ما الكونسلنج يخلص. يعني ممكن نعمل كونسلنج then we start coaching. اوكي؟ فاحنا عندنا السبلاي كتير قوي، لكن الناس الحقيقي مؤثرين وكومبتنت ان هم يعملوا ده قليلين جدا. وللاسف ما عندناش رقابه على ده. فاتمنى يكون في طريقه.
هنا بنتكلم على رقابه
كواليتي اشورنس يس، يعني
هنا بس هنا في الدول العربيه او هنا ريجن، ولا بنتكلم كاوفر فيو على العالم كله؟
بصي كان في مبادرات فرديه ان هم يعملوا زي ادوات لتقنين ده، او ان هم يعملوا فلتره للناس الحقيقي البروفيشنال والناس اللي هم واخدين الموضوع كوميرشال او كوميرشال بحت يعني. ولكن ما افتكرش انها لسه اثبتت النجاح، لان برضو السوق مفتوح والبروجرامز، يعني مش معنى ان انا خدت تريننج بروجرام يبقى انا كده سيرتيفايد. يعني في ناس بتاخد تريننج في حاجات ليها علاقه بالسايكولوجي وتطلع تقول ان انا معالج نفسي. في يعني عندنا مشكله في الرقابه. غير طبعا ان زي ما قلت لك، يعني انا لما بدات الكارير ديفلوبمنت من 10 سنين كل ما اقابل حد ممكن يطلع it's a non job issue. فرحت درست ثيرابي درست cognitive behavioral therapy علشان اتعامل مع الحاجات اللي ليها علاقه بالديبريشن والحاجات اللي ليها علاقه بالبيليفز والمعتقدات اللي الواحد ممكن يكون متبنيها. درست حاجات ليها علاقه بالinner child problems, childhood wounds، حاجات ليها علاقه بالparenting، حاجات يعني relationship coaching because sometimes بيجي لي سيدات فاكرين ان هم عندهم career issue in terms of the job، ولكن المشكله اصلا بتطلع في unfinished business with people. So التول باك دي او التول بوكس لازم تبقى ثريه جدا علشان تقدري توظفي كل تول على حسب الكيس اللي معاكي. مش واخده شهاده اسمها كارير كوتشنج واقول يا جماعه انا كارير كوتش يلا تعالوا عشان احل لكم مشكلتكم. اوكي، فدي الفكره ان هو therapeutic tools is very important for career development.
شكرا يا منى. Dr. Brian, back to you. Now, when I mentioned that monitoring or applying quality assurance level, acceptable level of quality assurance on individuals or professionals in career development has to be there in a way or another. Does NCDA apply such control or such monitoring or quality assurance level over the graduates of NCDA or the career development professionals?
It has the tools, and there is a pathway. I would say that it's not used a lot in the United States. And so the first thing that we look for is there a code of ethics for an organization? A code of ethics sort of creates a floor. It's not our highest aspirations. It's the bare minimum that someone must do to perform ethically and in some cases legally. Then it has to have some sort of body to which an ethics complaint could be filed. So I think that type of control happens in two ways. If you're employed by a company or a school and you're not performing well, then you may lose your job. Okay? If you're in an open marketplace where it's really your marketing, sales, and branding skills that bring a client to you, oftentimes there are very few ways to regulate. And so for counseling, just to give the example, a counselor has to be licensed by a government body, okay, a province or a state or a territory. And so there's a legal entity to which a client who is not being treated properly can apply and say, I'm being mistreated by this counselor or I'm being mistreated by this psychologist. And there's actually legal potential ramifications to that. Okay? For coaching, for NCDA, for the CCSP credential and the other credentials, a complaint could be filed to NCDA, as I understand it, who has an ethics board. And that can be considered in a non-legally binding penalty or correction communicated to that person. But in general, if the government is not holding the credential, the license, there's very little power behind giving a client access to remediation if they've not been treated properly. That felt complicated. Was that clear? Rich, how did I do?
Very clearly.
Okay, yeah. So we have, there's a great poet that spoke at NCDA a few years back called David White, and he has this amazing poem called Start Close In. Instead of doing step 5 or step 10, do step 1. And so for me, step 1 is create a code of ethics through your professional organization so that at least on paper, there are parameters of practice by which someone, if they wanted to be ethical, if they wanted to practice, they could look at that and model the practice after it. And I think that a lot of coaches operate, I mean, you don't even need to go, you can call yourself a coach in I think almost every country without any credential, without any training. In the United States, I could, you know, anyone could just call themselves a coach tomorrow and market themselves. And so we have to start with step one. Step one for me is doing the work of developing a code of ethics so that at least we have a statement of what good legal ethical practice looks like. Until we have that, what are we enforcing, right?
So code of ethics would be step number one.
Yes.
Yet we are not mitigating the risk of mispractice.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So do you have any thoughts, recommendations, how to apply such monitor and control? Why would be there any quality check or milestone checks for each and every one who gets license or grads or certificates out of NCDA?
Yeah. So I think if you have and NCDA has a code of ethics, the Asia Pacific Career Development Association has a code of ethics. APCDA also has a glossary of terms, which I think is important because we're all using the same words then to describe different things. Okay? I know Australia just came out with what they call their blueprint for career counseling, which is a national framework. And so I always start with someone that's done it already, but then I look at it through my cultural lens. If you just took the Australian blueprint and said this is the way we're going to do it in Qatar, like that doesn't make sense to me. So we want to get a model of a structure and a framework, but then we want to look at it through our cultural lens to develop it.
I guess NCDA يعني عندها ميزة إن أنا لما درست GCTF أوكي لما درست GCTF مطلوب مني إن أنا كل 5 سنين أكمل 75 ساعة extended learning أو دراسات تكمل اللي أنا درسته من الأول. ودي حاجة أفتكر لو بقية الباديز اللي هم بيسيرتيفاي career development professionals عملوها، الناس لازم عشان تفضل your license is active لازم تكون بتدرس وتكمل دراسة عشان add on your capabilities، مش just إن أنت تاخد شهادة وتقف عندها وتقول خلاص أنا كده تمام. فده بيخليني طول الوقت eager to learn more علشان أزود من التول بوكس بتاعتي، علشان كمان أنا مطلوب مني ده إن أنا كل 5 سنين علشان أجدد شهادتي لازم أخلص ال 75 ساعة بتوعي. فدي من ضمن الحاجات المميزة صراحة عن مدارس أخرى، إن أنت بتاخد الشهادة ومحدش بقى بيسمع عنك بعد كده. بس فكرة ال extended learning activities أو إن أنت تكمل دي حاجة مهمة جدا.
And if I can add to that, and so that's 50%, right, of the counseling relationship. That's the counselor or the coach or the facilitator. But then the client needs to be informed as well. And so I think that can be done in a few ways. We can, through our trainings, encourage coaches and counselors. We can give them examples of what's called informed consent and say, and train them. Every counselor that comes to your practice should get a document that looks like this, that tells them what's going to happen, that tells them what their rights are as clients, that explicitly tells them this is the payment and this is what you get for the payment. And so by informing them before they start, you give them a little bit of power to hold you as the coach or counselor responsible. Another thing you can do is some sort of public education, right? If people don't know what a coach does, is there a way to do a social media campaign to your targeted audience? Is there a way to use the government to promote career development? We're doing this now through the United Nations, right? We just had a career development month through the United Nations. And so an informed public has information by which they can create their own expectations. And so if we only focus on the career development professionals, at the end of the day, it's still that person's choice to act ethically or not. And if there's no reason, and that comes down to our morality, basically. But if you have an informed public, then there's more of a push on us to hold ourselves to the highest levels of accountability and ethics. That's going to be easier to do in an organization, in a company or a university. It's much easier with email lists and Slack and things like that to inform the potential clients what career development work is, what career coaching is. If you're working with the general public, then it's usually going to be a government or a professional organization like NCDA that's going to have to educate the public on the purpose, the ethics, the expectations around career development.
سؤال ليك يا ماما. ازاي نعادل ما بين جودة تقديم خدمات التطوير المهني مقابل العائد المادي؟
طيب
هو مبدئيا الموضوع زي ما دكتور براين قال it's about the ethics. يعني أنا لما مبدئيا المفروض إن أنا doing this for a purpose. أوكي؟ فأنا في مبادرات معينة مقرر أعملها بدون مقابل مادي علشان المجتمع محتاج مني الدعم ده، وفي ناس تانية قادرة زي مثلا international schools تقدر توازن إن أنا أقدر آخد منها المقابل اللي يخليني بعد كده أعرف أخدم الباقي for free. أوكي؟ فهو المفروض ده حاجة داخلية، يعني كل واحد لازم يبقى عنده السنس إمتى يقدم ده بدون مقابل علشان يخدم المجتمع، وإمتى يقدم ده بمقابل للناس القادرة على دفعه. فهي المفروض بتيجي it's an inside out something، يعني مش ان كل واحد بقى يعني وفكرة كمان ان انا مش شرط اكون انا الحد اللي يقدر يساعدك. يعني انا دايما بعمل حاجة اسمها pre diagnostic session قبل ما اخد فلوس خالص، اعرف مشكلتك ايه، ممكن يبقى عندي الحل وممكن اريفير لحد تاني. مش دايما بقول يس، لا انا ممكن اقول ما عنديش حل لمشكلتك وتقدر تروح لحد زي فلان فلان فلان. ف this is part of something ethical. يعني بدل ما بشتغل مع حد وانا عارفه ان انا مش هقدر اساعده، بس انا بقى فرصه. في ناس بتتعامل مع كل الكلاينتس على انهم فرصه طبعا تمام، لكن مش المفروض ان كل كلاينت فرصه. لا انا في المفروض guided something guiding me.
بصي هو الضمير والاخلاق
بالظبط
ايوه موجوده، بس مش هينفع ان احنا كل كلامنا يبقى دايما موزون بالضمير والاخلاق.
طيب
لان احنا كلنا مختلفين عن بعض.
ما الجهات الرقابيه
ايوه
دلوقتي مش قادره.
محتاجين جهات رقابيه
بالظبط.
او محتاجين رقابه شويه اكتر موجوده في تطبيقا يعني في الحياه.
ده التشالنج بصراحه. الجهات الرقابيه محتاجين جهه رقابيه تقول مين اليجيبل ان هو يعمل ده ومين لا.
نفس السؤال ليك يا دكتور براين.
Oh well.
Same question for you. All right. Now, how to ensure the level of quality that a career development practitioner is providing to its clients. However, how to equalize it with the payout.
What was the last part?
The payout.
Oh, okay. So I think assuring the quality starts here, right? We know that we are designed to learn socially, and that we create our morality, our ethics, our identity within the groups that we live with. And so the expectations of one another that we create here follow us back to our practice. So by staying in community, by keeping in touch, by working together, sharing ideas, the quality of practice will rise over time. To tie it to revenue, I think it's really a personal decision. I think that there are different models to perform career development work ethically that fit your personal needs.
So let me interrupt now.
Go ahead.
Regarding ethics or being a role model,
Yeah.
it's not always easy. And not each and everyone can do this.
Sure.
However, each and everyone, as a career development practitioner, will have to make our own living, right?
Right, yes.
So, I'm not sure how to ensure that each one of us can make a living out of this profession.
And I think that's how it's a personal thing. So we each have a lifestyle need. And the first thing we have to do is to be self-reflective and honest about what our material needs are. I ask clients in a first session all the time, that need a job, what is the income that you need in your life to support your family with this job? And the vast majority, 90% of clients have no idea. They don't know a wage, they don't know a salary, they don't know. And so financial literacy is an important part of this. And when I talk to career development professionals, a lot of us don't know either. So then we're putting ourselves in a situation where ethics can get slippery because we're on an endless treadmill of making money because we never did what we teach our clients to do, which is to identify, clarify, and act. We need to do that for our own financial well-being. So if you cannot be financially well for your life in this field, call me and we will find you another field. Right? You can't, this isn't a service profession for many of us because we can't have it be a service profession. We need to feed our children, give back to our community, pay their mortgage on our home. We need to do these structural things. I don't want to encourage anyone to live a life of distress to do career development work. Some of us have privilege. Like I have a full-time job as a professor that I can do because I've been doing it a long time at about 20 hours a week, which means I can work as a career development professional 20 to 30 hours a week, and I can give some of that time away for free because I have a full-time job. So I will work with you I asked how much money do you make, how much money do you have? If you need me and I have space, I will work with you for free. If you need me and you are a millionaire, which I am not, I will charge you $250 an hour.
No, you should be asking for 500.
Right. So I mean, we have to understand what our needs are. We have to understand what our value is, and we have to understand what the market can withstand.
Yeah.
And what the market can withstand really comes down to the choices of clients that we try to attract. If you want to work with millionaires, then you can make a really good living as an executive coach,
Why not?
The benchmark for a high-level executive coach is usually $10,000 a month as a starting point of income.
Really?
High level, that work with Fortune 500 companies and CEOs, absolutely.
I can add on this because أنا دخلت في الدايلاما دي إن أنا إزاي أوازن بين احتياجاتي المادية وبين إن أنا واخدة career development as a purpose. فإزاي أقدر أعمل الموازنة دي؟ فلما يعني سألت نفسي السؤال ده عملت بالظبط زي ما دكتور براين قال I have a full-time job as a learning and development consultant in a company وفي نفس الوقت career development is a parallel path علشان أقدر أعمل البالانس ده علشان أنا مش عايزة يبقى هو ده السورس اوف انكم الوحيد بتاعي عشان still I believe that it is a mission it's not something that you have to earn money from and now في دلوقتي business coaches بيعلموا ازاي الكوتشز ان هم يكسبوا فلوس من الكلاينتس وبيعاملوا الكلاينتس بالراس انا عندي كام راس الشهر ده اوكي فاللي هو لا انا مش حكايه عندي كام راس انا مش عايزه احول السيرفيس بتاعتي ان انا افضل افكر ان انا لازم يبقى عندي عدد كلاينتس الشهر ده عشان اعرف اعيش لا ما عشان كده فكره البارallel paths مهمه جدا and this is what we are calling for career development why not have parallel paths it's يعني
احنا اوريدي بنطبق ده.
yes
معظمنا مطبقه.
بالظبط خلاص make it as agile as you can علشان تقدر توازن بين احتياجاتك المختلفة.
أنا خلصت.
I'm done, actually.
Yeah, yes, he wants to add something. He
One.
wants to add something.
Oh, would you like to bid on something?
Well, can I just add to that?
Please do.
I think it might be useful just to say how I approach it. So I make a pretty exact number of money per year between my full-time job and my coaching and consulting business. I know what that number is today. I knew what that number was on January 1st when I did my business plan. I'm not going to work any more than that number. I'm not money driven, I'm not looking to become wealthy. That number is what I need to have a comfortable life that allows me to give away about 10 to 20% of my expertise for low cost and free. And then everything else is built around what I need to do to make that amount of money. And so if you're a corporation and you want me to come speak for an hour, I will say my rate is $2,500. If you're an organization, and plus expenses, of course. If you're an organization that's nonprofit, I will say, is this important for you? What is your budget? And then unless it's so low that it creates a hardship for me, I will do that. And so because I have the big picture of what my goal is, and I'm not just aggressively on a treadmill to make more money, and people that are, that's okay, that's just not me. So my practice, the way I describe it is I ask clients how much money you make, how much money does your household make, and then I have a sliding scale for individual work, where I can charge everywhere from 0 for an individual coaching appointment to $250 for an individual coaching. Those are just my numbers. I underprice myself because, again, I'm not good with money. So I try to build my practice so that it meets my purpose, which is to serve everyone that I can. It meets my needs, which is knowing how much money I need to make every year to take care of myself, my family, and my community. And then it gives me joy, right? That lets me to pivot to the parts of this field. Like, I don't like doing quantitative research as much anymore, so I shy away from that. I don't like doing program evaluations anymore. I used to do that, I shy away from that. So all of it for me is about flexibility and adaptability. You gotta know what your needs are, what your skill set is, the different things, and then you have to have a plan to follow so that fits for you, is the way that I think about it.
Perfect. Would you like to give some advice for career development practitioners and the community, for example? Would you like to give us a couple of advices? Take your time. Not too long, no?
I like to make things simple. And so I give you the same advice that I give supervisees and mentees. Go slow, name the parts, and visit the optometrist. I'll explain that. Everything in the world today, the Norwegian philosopher Gudum Floystad says this, it's all about speed up, speed up, speed up, speed up, catch up, catch up, catch up. The way that we think about and process things, it was designed thousands of years ago. We do best in a state of the John Dewey quote that Rich said today, of reflection. We don't learn from experience, we learn from reflection on experience. We don't decide in a moment, we decide well after reflection and clarification on that decision. So slow down. Second, name the parts. We tend psychologically, when we have a problem or a decision, to hold the weight of all of that problem or decision in our minds at the same time. And that weight crushes our ability to decide well. So if you need to make a business decision, whether or not to attend the very first Arab Career Development Association conference, I slowed down and I said, okay, what are the parts? I would be in a place I'd never been before. I would be with a new group of people that I want to influence. I would have a really stressful first week of classes because all of my classes at my university start today. So I'm teaching right now, okay? And so when we name the parts, we differentiate the weight that it's having on our psychology. And some parts are lighter than others, and some parts lift us up, and some parts weigh us down. So we slow down, we name the parts, and then we visit the optometrist. If you go to the eye doctor to get glasses, they always sit you in a chair, put a thing in front of your face, and they say, better one, better two, better one, better two. One, okay. Next, click, click, better one, better two. And so Adam Grant made this famous in his recent book, Think Again. But we need to rethink our possibilities and our decisions slowly and through different lenses. How will this career decision affect my prestige? Okay, that way. How will it affect my relationship with my family? Okay, that way. How will it affect my ability to live where I want? Okay, that way. And by naming the parts, we can then consider them as different lenses until we get the clearest vision for the possibility and the decision that we want to make. And so we apply that to ourselves, and then we teach that to our clients.
During ACDC 2023 and the coming 2 days of our conference, will be throwing us a workshop or a panel, right? Would you like to tell us about your panel during ACDC 2023? It's a workshop.
Oh, tomorrow's workshop?
Tomorrow's workshop.
Oh, yeah. So in sort of assessing what I know about the region, I decided to focus on career development in high school age. And my goal is to provide you with the fundamental pieces, the building blocks, to create a career development program in a high school setting. So a teacher, a principal, I know we don't have many school counselors or career counselors in schools, but again, just like a code of ethics, I want to give you a picture of what it looks like so that you can start to think about how we can put these pieces in to a high school environment to design careers.
I'm there, perfect.
Good, I'll see you tomorrow.
Yes.
She's going to give you a question.
Yes, yes. ايه ولا حاجة. الكلمة مش بتاعتك بكرة.
وانا هضرب رئيس المؤتمر هيضربني دلوقتي عشان انا طولت معاكم قوي انتوا الاثنين، فقولي لنا عن ورشتك.
طيب انا عندي ورشه بكره مع الطلبه. المفروض ان في طلبه هيجوا يحضروا معايا ورك شوب عن اسمها The Roadmap to Success، علشان هنتكلم بريفلي ازاي نعمل كارير بلان. فهم المفترض ان هم هاي سكول اور يونيفرسيتي جراديويتس. وبعد بكره عندي ورشه ثانيه بس مع سينيورز يعني ادلتس اسمها The Agile Career Development. How to apply الكونسيبت بتاع الاجيلتي على الكارير ديزاين. فدي هتبقى بعد بكره ان شاء الله.
ان شاء الله. رائع رائع جدا. بالتوفيق. شكرا دكتور براين. شكرا يا منى.
Thank you.
عندنا سؤال على السريع يعني
في سؤال؟
معلش خاطر محمد يعني تفضل استاذ.
Sorry to, but I have a question.
خد يا محمد.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the amazing conversation. It's really interesting to know more about the nitty-gritty details of the profession itself as career practitioners. But as you know, the career development and career guidance in our region, it's in very nascent stages, the infancy levels of its progress. So my question is, or before I ask the question, you know, many of the countries or people, they look at career guidance and career development as a luxury, a kind of luxury, due to different factors like, you know, the economic growth, the unemployment rates, and so on. So my question is, for you specifically, Dr. Brian, as an international expert, so what's your advice, and it's on two levels, advice for career practitioners as individuals, for us as parents, as normal people, and for also for the on a more strategic level to decision makers and policy makers on on how to instill this kind of culture and mindset in our region. I feel this is more relevant than what you said is really important, really, but the problem, this is the problem in our countries. This is how they look at the career guidance and career development.
I'm going to maybe repeat some of the things I've already said. I see this as a strategic communications problem, not a marketing problem. And I think too often we tend to take a marketing and branding approach. And I think it's more about strategic communications. So, I think we need something on paper about what it is that we're trying to accomplish. So things that I've named are glossary of career terms, code of ethics, blueprint for career development. But when we're talking, and I'm going to the second question first, when we're talking with policymakers, businesses, decision makers, we need a strategy behind our communications of change. So what are the levers of power that will cause them to make a different decision than they made before? And then we need to have a consistent communication plan to press on them over time. I think Ahmed's a perfect example about this. I met him in 2011. I'm not saying he's repeated himself for the last 12 years, but there has been a consistency in his communication plan to every place that I've ever heard him speak that has arrived at this conference today and where the Arab region is coalescing together today. When we just are speaking extemporaneously, when you have one idea and you have another idea, we're not building any cultural capacity for change.
Yes.
So that seems maybe boring or maybe simple, but like if we want to change systems, you need one of three things. Power, which career development doesn't have, money, which career development doesn't have, or a coalition of people that creates enough energy to influence power and money to make the change that we want to make. So a strategic plan, strategic communication, build a coalition of like-minded people that can persistently and consistently deliver that over time until the change happens. Hard work, nothing astounding. Did you want to say something?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Actually, I just wanted to ask the same question. I know overall as career coaches, but there are other stakeholders that are involved in this, and thank you for mentioning this. Government, and I saw this here in this conference that Mr. Ahmed wrote, some government institute like Habiba is an NGO or government, the minister, so they are participating in policy making. But what is missing also here, the private sector.
Right.
Private sector, they have the money and they can also support our work by offering training, internship, graduate program. And I want to tell you about our story in UAE. Now we do have a very well educated students. They do have the experience, they do have the education, but there are no job opportunities in UAE for Emirati. And what's happening now, the government is forcing those private companies to come up with a graduate program where they can go for a year and get the experience. So when I talk, I tell the students, you need experience. There are experience. They can go to those companies and they can get the right experience. So private company is a very important factor to help us to do our mission and our story and to support our students. Thank you.
If I could add to that something about the government, and maybe Ahmed could talk about this later, but he's just started.
Yeah.
It's not hard to get a public official to come to an event where there's a television camera. That's the easy part, right? Changing policy and funding something, that's further down the road. And so it's a process. It's a process. I want to make sure, so your first question was a little more personal. I think it's safe to say that everything that we know about career development as a science would tell us that the human brain isn't ready to make a serious career decision until probably the mid-20s. We've not fully done our cognitive development, our moral development, our identity development. And so one of the things that I'm big on working with school-age students is how do we make the idea of career engaging without making the decision of a career a punishment? And part of that is, I used to work in college career services. Students would show up flustered, right? They're in a pre-med program and they can't pass chemistry or mathematics. I have to do this, and my parents, I have to do this. If your parents have the best intentions in the world, this means they love you, but it also means that they don't understand something important about career development. And so the longer we can keep curiosity and engagement open for young people, the better off they're going to be in their mental health, their well-being, and they're going to end up more quickly making a better career decision for themselves. As soon as you're in 10th grade, got to get ready for college exams, which means we need to know a major by the end of this term.
Yes, this is a challenge.
It's well-intentioned. Teachers do it, counselors do it, principals do it, parents do it. They're 16. They're not cognitively developed enough yet to know anything about their future other than hope, possibility, curiosity, and engagement. So raise a good child and trust them to develop until they're ready to make, I think, a good career decision. I think that's better for their mental health and wellness. It's hard to take as a parent and adult because you don't want them to, go into certain fields that make you afraid for them.
Yes.
You want them to have a good life. But how many clients do you get at 30 who are burnt out, depressed, miserable?
Plenty.
That was me.
Plenty.
That was me. So if they have more space and time to be themselves, find themselves, be curious, and naturally arrive at their career direction. Now that doesn't mean that you don't have to study for math, right? You can still have expectations, but just not the expectation of you know what you're going to want to do for the rest of your life. I feel like that's very unfair to young people. But you better do your homework. No C's in algebra. That kind of thing is still fine. But do you want to be a dentist or a veterinarian at the age of 17? They just don't have enough information yet to really know the answer to that question, and it feels like pressure, and it feels like shame, and it feels like a lot of negative feelings that build up until they end up in their office depressed at 30. My take on it.
حاجة؟ تحب تقول حاجة يا باشمهندس؟
اسمحوا لي نيابة عن الحضور أشكر practice some Arabic please.
Pardon?
Practice some Arabic. أشكر
حبيبي
صديقي براين على وجوده وعلى الحوار الرائع اللي قام بيه. Dr. Brian, you are always. I'm trying to find a proper word, but maybe I need a page of words to describe how much I appreciate being here with us. Thank you, Brian. I really appreciate
My
it.
pleasure. My honor.
في نفس الوقت كمان ليس على سبيل التفاخر ولكن على سبيل الفخر. سعيد جدا بتلامذتي اللي تفوقوا على أستاذهم، ودلوقتي بيخلي عندي شعور إن لو غمضت عينيا ونمت في اللي يقدر يقدم أحسن من اللي أنا بقدمه. منى خالد ورندا وفي ناس تانية.
قول له بقى أنت قلت إيه عشان يعرف بالإنجليزي.
I'm proud of my students that became much better than their teachers. So
I would agree.
دلوقتي حضراتكم زملائنا الأفاضل من أسوان بنشكر حضوركم معانا. بكرة إن شاء الله الورش هتبتدي بالتوقيت بدقة آخر لأن أي تأخير هينعكس على بقية الورش، فرجاء الساعة 9 تبقوا عارفين الورش اللي تحبوا تحضروها عشان تيجوا في الوقت وتحضروها إن شاء الله. ده بالنسبة للناس الجمال اللي من أسوان.